In chapter 17, Jesus takes a few of his disciples up into a mountain. There he's supposed to have gone through a transformation where his face starts looking like the sun, okay? This can't be proven, nor can it be disproven. After a voice is supposed to come down from heaven saying that Jesus is the Son of God. Then they come down from the hill, and whilst they're coming down, Jesus tells the disciples not to tell anyone about the prophecy or what they've just heard. Clearly they fell because they wrote a book about it, and that's how so many people around the world know about it. They're also preaching to many people about how Jesus is God, hence they definitely are talking about this. But anyway, let's just ignore that part. But Peter then says to Jesus,
"And his disciples asked him, saying, Why then say the scribes that Elias must first come? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall first come, and restore all things. But I say unto you, that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them."
Okay, the first thing I have to say about this response is that he didn't answer the question. The question was,
"Why then say the scribes that Elias must first come?"
Why must Elias come first? Jesus just responds by saying, he has already come, but people don't know him.
And they knew him not.
How does that explain why he must come? Yes, he came in the past, hence why there's a story about him. Hence, if that was what the prophecy was talking about, then people did know him, because that's why there's a story about him. But the prophecy Malachi came after that story was made. Hence, it says that this person is going to come back. His disciples are just asking him, why is he going to have to come back before the end of the age? Jesus doesn't know what to say, so he's just said he's already come, but people don't know it. But him saying that only just leaves you asking more questions. Who is he? What did he do? Why don't we know it? He always does this. He answers a question by giving another question. But I, unlike Jesus, can answer both his question and the disciples' question. The disciples' question was, why does this person have to come back? The exact prophecy about this can be found in Malachi chapter 4, where it says,
"At the second coming, the proud and wicked will be burned as stubble. Elijah will return before that great and dreadful day."
The story of Elijah is a story about a man who's against Baal worship. And the prophecy says that before the end can come, this Elijah has to come back and do his preaching.
"Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse."
Jesus agrees with this prophecy, but he just makes out that he's already come.
And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall first come, and restore all things. But I say unto you, that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them.
But the prophecy in Malachi indicates that this person will come just before the end of time. Why? Because the whole chapter is about the end of time and the destruction that will happen. And because Jesus came 2,000 years ago and the end of time definitely wasn't then, because we're 2,000 years on from that, it kind of indicates that he hadn't come at that point.
But I say unto you, that Elias is come already, and they knew him not.
The book 1 Kings was written roughly between 561 to 538 BC. The book Malachi was written roughly 130 years later. Jesus says that this guy has already come, but clearly it's not talking about the first time he came, so Jesus just says something that isn't true. But I believe I can answer this question because I can say that he has to come because the story of him is about a man who's against Baal worship. But if you think about the religions now, Baal worship doesn't exist. There's no such thing. So a man can't come back and try and destroy Baal worship. But another interpretation of Baal worship is the god of child sacrifice. That's what he's known for, because a lot of people used to sacrifice their children to the altar of Baal. This is what this god is famous for. But if you think about it from that perspective, the Christian God is like the god Baal, because that god sacrificed his own son. That god also says how all people are his children, that they are his creation, and yet, according to Jesus, this God is going to kill lots of people at the end of time, hence he's going to kill his own children. Hence, the nearest thing to Baal worship is the Christian religion and all the different interpretations that base their religion off the Bible, both Old and New Testament. But in Malachi, there's a prophecy that says that this person must return.
"I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord."
Elias truly shall first come, and restore all things.
Peter has asked Jesus, why must this Elijah return first? My answer to that would be that this Elijah is actually just a prophecy about the real Christ. And the prophecy is saying that this real Christ is going to do exactly what Elijah did and try and stop this Baal worship. this worship of the God who sacrificed his son. For like the Bible says, the falling away needs to happen before Christ can come. And this Elijah is the one that's going to do that falling away.
The day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God.
And so the story of Elijah is like a prophecy of what the real Christ is going to have to do. Jesus backs up my theory by saying this.
And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall first come, and restore all things.
I think this Elias is like the real Christ, me. I have come and I'm restoring all things because I'm telling people the truth about what the Bible means.
But I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not.
I believe Elias is just another prophecy of me. And yes, I have come, but they knew me not, because they don't think that I'm Elias, because I'm not a male.
But have done unto him whatsoever they listed.
Yeah, Christ is supposed to be persecuted, and they've done that to me, yes. All the things that are prophesied in the Bible, the things that are listed.
Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them.
The Son of Man is Martin, and I believe that he, if he loves me, is kind of suffering too because he can't be with me. And if I'm right about what I believe, then he wants to be with me. But, however, there's another way of interpreting the story, for a lot of these stories have deeper meanings. And well, the deeper meaning behind the Elijah story is that Elijah isn't actually just against Baal worship, but he's also against Jezebel. Jezebel is supposed to be the queen. Ahab is supposed to be the king ruler. Ahab, I do have to mention, looks very similar to my name if you just change the H into an N. Letters that look very similar. If you change the N into a H and add a space, it says Anna B, the king ruler. But anyway, but Jesus says that this person has already come.
But I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed.
The person who's going to stand up against Jezebel. I think if you look at the story from that perspective, you can say that this person has already come. Why? Because this person is like Jesus. Jesus has come up against Jezebel because he's come up against God the Mother, just in the same way that this Ahab has come up against Jezebel. So when Peter asked Jesus, why does this Elijah have to come first? There's kind of two answers. Because of what Jesus has just said. Because one, Elijah has to come to start the falling away of this Baal worship, and the other has to come to get people to sacrifice Jezebel. Elijah was the one who killed Jezebel, just in the same way that I believe Jesus is making prophecies about me. Only the stupid people of the world think that they're about Jesus, even though they're clearly not. But me knowing that they're actually about me, and knowing that there's no one I can convince out there that would support me on this is causing me a huge amount of grief, hence by making me feel like I am the sacrifice and that he has won, just in the same way that Elijah won over Jezebel. In the story, she was fed to the dogs. Well, that's how I feel, only people of the dogs. And I feel this way because of Jesus, and the dogs, of course. But at the same time, I know Martin Dodd believes what I'm saying. I believe that he's got a whole group of people that also know and believe what I'm saying because they've had prophecies about a woman coming who needs to be sacrificed or needs to be separated from her lover for so many years. These people do believe me, but they're not talking to me. But the reason why prophecies about me exist do stem from Jesus and his religion. Hence, I have been sacrificed because of the things that Jesus has done, because of some of the prophecies that he has helped inspire. The prophecies about the bride of Christ coming back. But the bride is the one that must go through the real sacrifice. In the story, Elijah believes that his God is the right God, but Jezebel believes that her God is the right God. She's out to destroy his people. He wishes that he could destroy her people because he believes that his God is the right God and Jezebel's God is the wrong God. This is what the Bible has to say about Jezebel and what she was doing.
For it was so when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water.
Since I believe that all the characters in the Bible just make prophecies about the future Christ, I see Jezebel as being like this future Christ, the real female goddess that hates people that worship God the Father. And it's a story that prophesies that when she comes, she will seek out to destroy these people. Of course, she's not actually going to kill people, but I believe this story is just inspired by something that she will do, which is to destroy Christianity and cut the people off from their God, because it's false. But either way, whatever, I think it's a story that's prophesying a future event. Ahab is the king, Jezebel is the queen. These people are like the return of the mother and father. Only it makes a prophecy that Jezebel will be against someone who's like Elijah. So when Jesus says that this Elijah character has already come, it almost sounds like he's talking about himself.
But I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not,
That he is this one that's going to be against God the Mother, against the queen Jezebel.
but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them.
In the story of Jezebel, Jezebel was against Elijah, and Elijah was against Jezebel. So it's prophesying that in the future there's going to be two kings that are going to have different gods, and they're going to be against each other. The story goes on to say that
Now therefore send, and gather to me all Israel unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves 400, which eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent unto all the children of Israel, and gathered the prophets together unto Mount Carmel. And Elijah came unto all the people, and said, How long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him.
he believed that he could prove that his God was the right God by getting two bulls, giving one to the people of Baal to put on a fire, and giving the other to himself to put on his fire.
I, even I only, remain a prophet of the Lord. But Baal's prophets are 450 men. Call ye on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God that answereth by fire, let him be God.
Both people are to pray to their own God and convince their God to light the fire, hence cooking the bull. A bull that could be in reference of a sacrifice. And the side which can magically get their fire to light first, using the power of their God only, these will be them who have won, hence by proving that their God is the true God. For one thing, this is not possible. It does sound like some sort of magic trick. People do this kind of magic all the time. This is what it sounds like. But let's just assume that it's right for now. According to the story, the people who worship Baal couldn't get their fire to light naturally.
And called on the name of Baal from morning even until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, nor any that answered.
But he, however, could.
And Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, unto whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be thy name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And it came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that Elijah the prophet came near, and said, Let it be known this day that thou art God in Israel, and that I am thy servant, and that I have done all these things at thy word, that this people may know that thou art the Lord God, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell, and consumed the burnt sacrifice.
And because he could, he got his people to kill and capture all the people of Baal. Okay, first flaw to the story is, why would God want to help this guy burn an animal if he knew that that guy was going to use this miracle of God as an excuse to kill hundreds of people that worship Baal? The second flaw I'd like to point out is that Elijah says this,
I, even I only, remain a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men.
So here he's saying that right now only he believes in this God. He supposedly does a miracle, then somehow he manages to convince all the people of Israel to kill this army.
And Elijah said unto them, Take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them. And Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon, and slew them there.
This army that has scared lots of people, hence why 100 people have had to flee into the mountains. But what I'm saying is the people of Israel didn't worship the same God that Elijah was worshipping, because Elijah did make the statement that
I, even I only, remain a prophet of the Lord.
Only he was the one who knew about this God. So why would they murder an army of 450 men who probably regularly train, hence are very good fighters? Why would they kill them for doing something that they themselves were doing? Because according to this prophet, he's the only one that's worshipping the right God. Okay, yes, he did tell them to kill these people, but would they really listen to him just because a fire was lit? If such tests did happen, I'm sure the Baal worshippers would just be like, I'm sorry, I was worshipping the wrong God, I'm going to worship your God. Hence the people of Israel wouldn't start charging at them as to murder them. People make mistakes, it's just common. This audience that are watching this test are unlikely to just be like, let's kill 450 of the Baal army. Why? Because they don't believe in exactly the same thing that we didn't believe in just a few minutes ago. They wouldn't do that. So the story story is flawed for that reason. But anyway, whether or not the story actually happened, this is completely irrelevant, because I believe that this is just a story that prophesies something that's going to happen in the future. Elias, or Elijah, it's the same thing, represents the Christ that's going to come with a new telling of the Bible, an understanding to God that no one else in the world has understood, hence why it says this. And she'll be up against, just like Elias was, this person will be up against lots of people that worship this Baal god, the Christians, because their god is most similar to Baal because he sacrificed his only son, just like Baal is supposed to be the god of child sacrifice. And when it comes to the bull on that sacrifice, the Christians believe that Jesus is the sacrifice. So the bull that they chose to put on their fire, that bull represents Jesus. The story says they prayed day and night that the sacrifice will be burnt, the fire will be lit.
And called on the name of Baal from morning even until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us.
O Father, hear us. We stand upon this altar.
The altar which was made. But there was no voice, nor any that answered, and they leaped upon the altar which was made.
This is like the Christians that are waiting for Jesus to return and for the fire to start, for the end of the world to come.
And it came to pass, when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that there was neither voice, nor any to answer, nor any that regarded.
They prayed day and night, just like the Christians do. The scripture says they wait till the evening sacrifice.
They prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice.
The sacrifice as in the Great Tribulation, where the Antichrist will come and persecute many people. The Great Tribulation. They wait for this day, but nothing happens. They hear no voice from God. They hear no sign. They just get nothing. The scripture does say that they go on to.
And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets, till the blood gushed out upon them.
Okay, people aren't really doing this now, but they have done this in the past, definitely. And in the Middle East, there's still lots of people being persecuted and murdered for Christianity. They've started tons of wars throughout history and killed so many people over this. And yet their fire never gets started.
That there was neither voice, nor any to answer, nor any that regarded.
Because the God that they worship isn't the real God. They're worshipping a false God, and they can't get their fire to light because it's not the truth. They believe that the rapture will happen and the fire will be lit, but it won't happen. Elijah goes on to mock them, just in the same way that I am mocking them now.
And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, Cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, or he is in a journey, or peradventure he sleepeth and must be awaked.
But in the story, Elijah can get his fire to start.
And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces. And they said, The Lord, he is the God.
I believe that Elijah is a representation of the true Christ that needs to come back like prophesied before the end of the age can start. But I also believe that the cow that's on that fire also represents this same person. So it's saying that this woman is going to come back. She's going to give people a choice. Do they want to continue believing that Jesus is the sacrifice? Or do they want to believe that she's the sacrifice? Of course, though, in his ritual that he did, there's constant mention of Israel.
Israel shall be thy name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord.
The name of Israel, the tribes of Israel.
Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Israel. Let it be known this day that thou art God in Israel, and that I am thy servant.
3 times does he put buckets of water over this sacrifice.
And he said, Do it the 3rd time.
The term the water breaks, this is a term used for when a woman is about to give birth. And so it could be an indication that the water has to break 3 times, e.g. I have to have 3 lives. Eve, Aaliyah, Anna. And a lot of things that he says within the ritual suggest that he is worshipping the God of Israel. Jesus says that he's worshipping the same God, but he's not, because Elias doesn't believe in Jesus. Elijah doesn't know about Jesus. Elijah came way before Jesus, and he didn't preach about a son of God returning. And if he did, that doesn't mean he was talking about Jesus. So Jesus' God and his God aren't necessarily the same God just because Jesus says it is the same God. I believe that Israel is a woman.
Let it be known this day that thou art God in Israel, and that I am thy servant, and that I have done all these things at thy word.
I believe the ritual talks about Israel because it says how Israel is going to come back as a human. This is why I believe this Elijah character represents this Christ, because like Elijah, they'll both be human, they'll both have a different God to everyone else. Hence why this Elijah character represents this woman. This woman is going to come like Elijah did, only the cow that she's going to choose is actually going to be herself. This is what a lot of people believe about Jesus, that Jesus likewise sacrificed himself. But Jesus doesn't say that. Jesus calls himself the Son of God, and Jesus says how God sacrifices the Son son. Hence, Jesus' God is actually the God of child sacrifice, because in his version of the story, God sacrifices children. And God is going to sacrifice more children when he comes back at the end of the age and allows the Antichrist to kill millions of people. And then after that's happened, Jesus promises to come back and kill all the people that worship the Antichrist at the Great Tribulation. Hence, loads of people will die. That's the Christians' and Catholics' belief, because it was Jesus' belief. But where in the Bible does it say that Elijah believes in the same thing? Elijah gets his fire to burn because he's worshipping a God that no one else is worshipping. The God of Israel, Israel who I believe is a woman. People aren't worshipping the God of Israel because they're worshipping Jesus, a man. So just because Jesus comes saying, yes, I'm worshipping the same God as Elijah is, how does that prove that he's right? I believe that Israel's telling of what God is just herself, with no power, other than the power to inspire books. And her telling of what the sacrifice of God is not to sacrifice her son or one of her children, it's to sacrifice herself, to give her time up for this religion, to give her life up for this religion, to spend years preaching about her version of the story. And then after she's done this, she'll expose herself to the world as being the Christ. You may not see that as a sacrifice, but just think how many Christians there are out there that believe that the Antichrist will come saying that she's God or he's God. What would people do to this woman if someone did come on the scene claiming to be the true God? Strong Christians and other religious organizations, they would hate her, they would mock her, they would laugh at her, they would make YouTube videos about how she's going to go to hell. They wouldn't believe her. Many might want to kill her. Muslims will also be against her because she won't be for Muhammad. She'll preach how Jesus and Abraham weren't nice people. You know, if someone comes preaching what I'm preaching, they will be hated by the whole world. They will have to sacrifice their whole life because they're not going to be able to live in the open any longer. They're not going to be able to go down to the grocery store because people will want to murder them. Okay, it'll be fine when everyone has accepted her truth, but that's not going to happen straight away. And even if it does happen, even if people do believe that she's the real Christ, suddenly everything that she says is going to be put on a platform. She could just say something out of like carelessness and then find that that's all over the news and people are taking it really seriously. You know, she'll have a massive responsibility to be a good person.
For they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. And ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what ye shall speak, for it shall be given you in that same hour what ye shall speak. For it is not ye that speak, but the Spirit which speaketh in you.
I was watching an interview with Oprah, and she was saying how she would consider running for president, but people were saying that wouldn't you not worry that as soon as you become president, suddenly everyone's going to start delving and digging into your past, picking up on every little word that you say and trying to scrutinize you for it. You know, this is a risk. This will happen. I know this will happen. And me being a masseuse all my life, you know, I'm sure there's going to be loads of ex-clients that would come forward and say that I've done more with them and stuff. But you know what? I don't care because I'm standing for what I believe in. And I'm willing to sacrifice everything for this, including my reputation.
Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many.
To come as a Christ is to have to give up your whole life and realize that everything that you say will have an impact on the world for both good and bad. And so you might see the Antichrist coming on the scene as that person just bigging up themselves. But it's not. If anyone does come on the scene saying that I am God, they'll be hated and despised throughout the world. And if they are believed, then they'll be worshipped like a god, in which case they won't be able to live a normal life because they're going to have to really watch what they say. And the weight of the world is going to be on their shoulders because of this, for it is not an easy burden. I said earlier that the Christ will suffer for years, but you might not think that that's got anything to do with the story because Elijah just did the magic and impressed everyone instantly, but that's not what it says. It said that Elijah too had to wait till the evening sacrifice.
And it came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice.
But unlike what happened with the fire with the Baal worshippers, Elijah's fire was lit. This symbolizes that when this woman comes to try and light this fire, after the ritual has taken place, her version of the story will be spread throughout the world. It will cause fire. It will fulfill the prophecies, for the calf was burnt up and everything in the altar.
Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench.
This is symbolic of the Bible being fulfilled, all the prophecies within. Hence why Jesus replies to Peter and says, everything listed will be fulfilled.
Why then say the scribes that Elias must first come? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall first come, and restore all things. And they knew him not. but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them.
And Jesus didn't fulfill it. He said it was him, but that is just because he, like Elijah, is just a prophecy of someone to come. And when this person comes, her cow will be burnt, because her sacrifice is the true sacrifice, the one the timeline is waiting for. For prophecies to exist, a timeline has to exist for the prophecies to be fulfilled. Jesus preached about how God is going to sacrifice his son. That's Baal worship. I believe these stories prophesy a woman, but the people themselves, whether they were real people or not, as the only people who we know are real are actually just the writers, for most of these books were written hundreds of years after the people were supposed to have even lived. But anyway, I believe these fictional characters, or the writers of these fictional characters, they had no idea that the God of Israel is actually the God of a female sacrifice. They have no idea that Israel is a woman. Only the Spirit does. The Elijah that came in the past, if such a person did exist, he didn't realize that the cow that he was burning was actually symbolizing Israel herself. Later he went off to kill and persecute Jezebel. He tossed her out of a window precisely, and then she got eaten by a bunch of wild dogs. He did that because he blamed her for killing lots of people and for being part of Baal worship. But at the end of the day, how would he even known this? How would the writers have known this? Maybe she was innocent. Maybe she didn't worship this Baal worship. Or if she did worship a god called Baal, what's wrong with that? There's only something wrong with it if you end up killing people for it, or criticizing others, or believing that God is a murderer and about to kill lots of people, that God wants his son dead, that God wants people to sacrifice others for him. That's, to me, something that's wrong. But just believing that God's name is Baal, that in a way is me saying I'm going to kill you because you call God the name of Bob. A name doesn't mean anything. It's what you think of that God. That's what matters. And what you do in the name of that God. Some of my clients call me Annabelle. Do I really care? No. They've got my name wrong, but so what? If, however, they thought that I was a prostitute who murdered my own children, then yes, I would hate them. But if they just get my name wrong, so what? I believe this is how God feels. God doesn't care what name you give her or him, if you think it's a him. But what God does care about is whether or not you think that God murders his own people, or that God is going to end the world soon, or that God is a person who only wants self-glory. Then I'm pretty sure God is pissed off. Also, it's just a fact that most men don't like being called women. Likewise, most women don't like being called men. So if God is feminine, she would probably hate those who think that she's masculine. And likewise, if God is masculine, then he would probably hate it if people saw him as feminine. Christians, on the other hand, talk about him as though he's a male, and yet they would describe him as being loving and caring. Hence, they kind of describe him as being more of a feminine soul. I think Elijah did represent the Christ that's going to come, but the second the writers go on to say that he kills loads of people, that's when the Spirit loses interest in him and starts wanting to manifest more so in Jezebel. That's how I feel when I read this story, and I believe that if the Spirit has done this within this story, then it actually teaches people that you shouldn't just read something and believe it at first value. For example, you can think that she worships Baal, but really there's no evidence behind it. You can think that she was going around demanding an army to kill lots of people, but back then people didn't really listen to women. So was that the truth? Maybe she just hung around with people who did. Maybe she was just born in a country that worshipped Baal. Likewise, I was born in a country where everyone's Christian. It doesn't mean that I'm Christian. I've hung out with Christians. That doesn't mean that I'm a Christian. I've done lots of research into the Bible. That doesn't mean that I'm a Christian. And likewise, just because Jesus has researched Elijah's God doesn't mean that he actually believes in Elijah's God. For Jesus did not know Elijah. They were born at completely different times. So how would Jesus know that he was worshipping the same sort of thing as him? Christians are so dumb. They do just seem to focus on the name. They think if the name is the same, then everything else is the same. And yet when it comes to reality, a Christian is very happy to insult a Catholic for their beliefs. Likewise, a Catholic is likely to insult a Christian for their beliefs. But of course, Jesus and Elijah, even though they didn't know each other, they had exactly the same God. It's crazy. It's just like, no, it's what that person is like, what that person believes in, what that God does. That's what a God is, not just their name. I don't believe these two fictional characters are worshipping the same thing, because he's changed so many things. And the Bible does say, you're supposed to listen to what the Spirit is saying through them, not what the men is saying or what they think.
He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth saving he that receiveth it. And ye shall have tribulation. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death.
I believe that Israel will come like fulfilling the prophecy in Malachi, only she'll hate the fact that she's a sacrifice. But however, she won't realize the extent of how bad she'll suffer. She won't realize how long she's going to suffer for. In Elijah's story, people then believe that he has the truth and that he has the true God. And then they go set off and kill the Baal worshippers. This is like in reference of the Christians. But of course, in my telling of the story, there's not going to be any murder because I, unlike Elijah, I won't tell people to kill and murder people. I will just tell them to destroy their religion. I know earlier I said that Jezebel represents God the Mother, another figure of this Christ figure, and that Jesus could represent this Elijah figure because Elijah is against Jezebel. But if you listen to the story carefully, you'll see that it's not the people of Jezebel that die, because at the beginning it says,
And the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves 400, which eat at Jezebel's table.
So here it said there's 450 Baal worshippers and there's 400 people that sit on Jezebel's table. And according to the story, only the 450 Baal worshippers are the ones that are murdered.
I, even I only, remain a prophet of the Lord. But Baal's prophets are 450 men. And Elijah said unto them, Take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them, and slew them there.
And while that does leave the 400 who sit on Jezebel's table, that leaves them as the most likely culprits as to who did the killing of this big army. People believe that Jezebel worshipped Baal, but nowhere in the Bible does it actually say that. All it says is that Jezebel married Ahab, and then after that, Ahab started setting up temples to Baal. So why would someone automatically assume that he started believing in Baal just because of Jezebel? You know, if I marry someone and that guy then goes on to start believing that Bob is God, that doesn't mean that he believes that Bob is God because of me. He could just generally believe in his own mind that Bob is God, that God's name is Bob. There is a part later on that says Jezebel's army was killing the prophets.
Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, for it was so when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave.
But how many armies are there in history that take their leadership from a queen? There's very few. I think Cleopatra was about the only one. The second flaw to that story is that Elijah believes that he was the only prophet.
I, even I only, remain a prophet of the Lord.
So how can Jezebel go around killing the prophets of the Lord if Elijah is that only prophet? Maybe it meant there was others but Jezebel had killed them. But if that's the case, who are they? What do they do? Where are their books? For them to be a prophet, they would have to have books in evidence of this. According to Google, Kings 1 and Kings 2 were the only books written in the time frame of 561 BC to 538. For Jezebel to try and kill these people, they would have had to be alive at the same time that Jezebel was alive. So if there are other prophets, where are they? Where are their books? Also, if the story was a true story, then they're most likely the king's army, hence Jezebel probably has nothing to do with this army. The prophets are just accusing her of being the leader of this army. But just because their army is doing bad things, that doesn't mean that she's the one that's actually in charge of that army. I've gone to about 12 different Christian camps when I was a child. I've come from a strong Christian background. I was brought up in a Christian country, but all these things doesn't mean that I'm a Christian. I mean, if Jezebel's a queen and Elijah just a preacher, how would he even know what Jezebel was inside? But according to this story, he didn't kill the people that sat on Jezebel's table. He only killed the people that worship Baal. And even if they did sit on her table, does that really mean that she likes them? Not necessarily. Okay, in the story, he does go on to kill Jezebel, but in the same way that he lit this fire and burnt that sacrifice, I believe that Jezebel is another representation of the sacrifice, how she was fed to the dogs. So Elijah kills the bull just like Elijah kills Jezebel. It's the same story, only the second story is where this sacrifice is a woman, prophecy of something to come in the future. This woman being me, the dogs being the Christians who are against me. Listen to this line that comes in the next chapter.
And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time.
I know this may sound very confusing, but Elijah kills these people, and Jezebel says to Elijah, May God kill me too, in the same way that you've killed those people, providing I can kill you in the same way that you've killed those people. So basically Jezebel wants Elijah to suffer and Elijah wants Jezebel to suffer. But if both of them are representations of this Christ figure, the Christ figure that's going to come and light the sacrifice, e.g. that's like the Antichrist that comes and starts the Great Tribulation, versus the Christ figure that's going to come and be sacrificed. That's the Antichrist who's going to come claiming to be God and is actually God, but because people don't know her, they will hate her at first. You know, I just think that both these characters represent a different part of the same person.
So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose, and went for his life, and came to Beersheba, and he requested for himself that he might die, and said, It is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life.
And it's saying how Christ is going to sacrifice herself, not God is going to sacrifice his son. And that story is prophesying that she will be sacrificed, she will be fed to the dogs being a reference to these people, the Christians, and all the people that hate the idea of the mother goddess worship. She'll be a sacrifice to them, and she'll preach to them just like I'm preaching to you. But these people that she'll preach to will think that they've won. They'll think that they have destroyed her, not the other way around. Just in the same way that many Christians have mocked me and said that I'm of the devil, I'm preaching nonsense. They're giving me a warning about how I'm about to go to hell because of what I'm saying. They are saying to me the same things that Elijah's people said to Jezebel. Things like, just because you don't understand the Bible doesn't mean that you're right. That's literally what someone said to me yesterday. About the video, Proving Jesus Isn't Christ Part 4 video. That is such a patronizing thing to say because the whole video is 1 hour long of me explaining how I know exactly what the Bible is talking about. And in it, I explain every single parable and give evidence that Jesus clearly doesn't, because he doesn't explain one single thing other than his belief that the tares are bad people who are about to be burnt alive by angels, by the will and power of God. And with that one thing that he did explain, this woman wrote to me saying how she was offended at the thought of me telling them that Jesus is wrong. I want to slap her. And of course she had to add that she was telling me this out of love. Actually, come to think about it, now I understand why Jesus said,
O generation of vipers, how can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh.
It's because his people don't know what love is. I made an hour-long video going into detail about how I believe I know exactly what the Bible is saying, and she has the nerve to tell me that just because I don't understand anything doesn't mean I'm right. You know, if I didn't think I understood it, I wouldn't have just made an hour-long video explaining about how I know what I'm talking about. If her insulting me in this way is her showing me love, then it's clear that she doesn't know what love is.
A good man out of the good treasure of the heart bringeth forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth evil things.
That same woman then said that I don't know what kind of spirits I'm dealing with, but that she's been sent by God to give me this warning that these spirits are not my friends. No, she's not my friend. This is the same person who's offended at me saying that Jesus is not going to come down to murder lots of people.
But I say unto you, that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment.
When it comes to these people, I do feel like I'm being attacked by wild, dumb animals. The people of Elijah accused Jezebel of being the one who was worshipping the god of child sacrifice, and they sacrificed her because she was trying to stop them. And yet in my telling of the story, they were the ones that were actually doing it, only they gave it the name Yeshua instead. Just in the same way that those people who worship that god believed that their god was the true God, I believe people like this woman are worshipping the wrong god, but they themselves think that they're worshipping the true God. But like the people in the story, people like them are going to continue believing that the world is going to end soon, that millions of people are going to die, and that they'll die at the hands of their God. But their God won't light that fire. All they'll end up doing is looking silly on the day that comes when I'm proved right.
An evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth evil things.
I've explained the two questions that they've asked. I'm now going to go to the prophecy itself and explain it further.
Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse.
Peter asked Jesus, why does Elijah need to come first? Well, I think there is two answers. The real Elijah needs to come first to give people the choice as to which cow they prefer to sacrifice. One will be the truth and one won't be. So this Elijah figure will come with the answers. But first there'll be another Elijah. This is Jesus, who has already come in the past. But this is something that must happen because when the mother comes, she'll point out all the flaws and will find the hidden evidence that proves that actually God is a female and that Jesus is wrong about many things. Jesus needs to rise first because this Jesus character can make tons of prophecies about what the true Christ is really like, and when the true Christ does finally come, she will expose the truth and people will finally be able to believe that this is the true Christ. Why? Because she can understand the books and the Bible better than Jesus could. And I don't tolerate any asshole that wants to write to me saying, just because I don't understand the books doesn't mean I'm right. Fuck you. In Malachi chapter 4, there's also many other prophecies that are very wrong. I'll just show an example of what they are.
At the second coming, the proud and wicked will be burned as stubble. Elijah will return before that great and dreadful day.
For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch.
This is not going to happen. Lots of people aren't going to be burnt alive.
But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings.
Here it says how you'll see the Son of Righteousness, sun as in S-U-N, meaning the thing in the sky, not referring to a son as in a male child. It does say how you'll see the sun, and Jesus in this same chapter, where one of his disciples talks about a prophecy in Malachi chapter 4, apparently his face turns into sun.
Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John his brother, and bringeth them up into an high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light.
To me, it just sounds like someone's read the book of Malachi and are trying to write another book, only this time trying to connect the two and make it seem like Jesus is fulfilling another one of the prophecies in that same chapter.
Shall the Son of Righteousness arise?
And his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light.
Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord.
And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall first come, and restore all things. But I say unto you, that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed.
When it's obvious that it's not the truth. But there are a lot of prophecies in the Old Testament, and so is it just a coincidence that in Matthew chapter 17, Jesus happens to fulfill the prophecy about the Son, S-U-N, of righteousness appearing, and that's something that he is supposed to have done, shown himself as being like the Son. And in that same book of Matthew, they happen to talk about more things in Malachi chapter 4. You know, like, is that a coincidence, or does it sound more like they've just read Malachi chapter 4 and now are writing Matthew chapter 17 and are trying to incorporate the two books to make it look like Jesus is fulfilling prophecy, when really all they've done is just read a book and are inventing things that this fictional character has done. Malachi chapter 4 is also all about the end of the world and lots of people dying.
And ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall, and ye shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I shall do this, saith the Lord of hosts.
And so I think whoever wrote the book Matthew clearly loves these books and wants to believe that these books are the truth, hence why he's making out that Jesus is fulfilling prophecies. Why? Because he wants this character to support these prophecies in Malachi about how the world is ending. For if the writer can prove that Jesus is fulfilling some of these prophecies in Malachi chapter 4, it indicates that the other prophecies in Malachi chapter 4 are also correct when they're not. And most of it is just bullshit. It's an exaggeration, people wanting the world to end. And you know what, however much you want it, it's going to be like that cow.
And ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall.
And it's not going to be set alight. That's what Malachi actually says in its scripture, that the man of destruction, the son of righteousness who's going to kill millions of people, this person is going to grow up like a calf.
With healing in his wings. And ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall, and ye shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet.
Yeah, I think that's talking about Jesus. Jesus is going to grow up like the calf that's going to be put on the stall. One calf was set alight and the other wasn't. I believe if you believe everything in the book, that's the same as worshipping the cow that's not going to be set alight. For logic speaks louder than an old book. The spirit talks louder too. For example, there is something in Malachi, but in the NIV version, that I definitely do agree with, for it doesn't say those who fear the name of the Lord, it says those who reserve the name of the Lord. They will see the Son of Righteousness, but I would say the light of righteousness. I prefer that term. This indicates that the name of the Lord is reserved until the end. Hence, it could be saying, if a name like Jesus comes your way, you can accept it as being a name, but you shouldn't accept it as being the true name of the Lord, because according to that prophecy in this Bible, in Malachi, the true name of the Lord is reserved until the end. Hence, it can't be Jesus, because Jesus came 2,000 years ago, that wasn't the end, hence his name wasn't reserved till the end. When it comes to prophecies in the Old Testament, I don't really want to analyze them. Why? Because I think there's so many tears, so many lies, so many mistakes, that I'll just be correcting most things if I were to go through the Old Testament. I believe my spirit is actually coming from this year, the years between 2013 and 2018, or whenever Martin comes back. This is known as the tribulation of the church or the bride. I believe the older the books are, the further they are from my spirit, hence meaning the less correct they are, hence the more likely mistakes are going to be within them. For example, I believe Jerusalem, Israel, Zion is actually a person, not a city. But because most people don't believe that this is a person, me talking about this city as being a person isn't really going to strike that much attention, because most of Christianity, the people focus on Jesus, because he's believed to be the saviour. And so me proving that he's not the saviour will strike more emotion in people, hence why I'm doing it. Because I want to create controversy, hence why I'm focusing on stories about him.
Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation, and I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes.
I don't want to focus on old books, but at the same time, for me to prove that this Jesus character is just a prophecy of me.
Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me.
Jesus is making prophecies about a future Christ, but he's actually robbed me of being a Christ because I'm trying to prove it and everyone's saying, no, it's Jesus, not me. Hence, he's robbed me. And you, by agreeing with Jesus, have allowed him to rob me. So I need to analyze the books to prove that I'm right, that the Bible is about me. The problem is, there's so many lies hidden within. And because people care about Jesus but they don't care about Jerusalem, it'd be more worth my time focusing on him rather than trying to prove that Jerusalem is me. I would focus on modern books because I can do exactly the same thing with all books, or most books. But because religious people only accept me as a Christ if I focus my attention on the Bible, this is where my focus is going to be.
Your words have been stout against me, saith the Lord. Yet ye say, what have we spoken so much against thee? Ye have said, it is vain to serve God.
This is what people say in this age, either that it's useless to believe in God, or that it's vain for me to worship myself as God, and useless for me to believe in a real God that is actually myself. People see point in worshipping Jesus because he offers lots, because he promises to come back and offer tons of rewards. But people say it's useless for me to believe in God because this God that I worship doesn't offer out these rewards. And yeah, there are also a lot of atheists in the world, hence there's a lot of people that say it's futile or useless for you to believe in God. But this wasn't the case in Jesus' day because religion was very important back then. These verses are prophecies of what would happen to the Lord when she comes, and it's telling you why the Lord is angry. And this is why I'm angry, because people are telling me exactly the same thing that this book is saying. Hence I'm proving that this book could be inspired by the things that I'm going through right now. Only no one believes me because they're all too busy worshipping Jesus because of the things that he stole from me. The Bible also says that people say this against the Lord.
And what profit is it that we have kept his ordinance, and that we have walked mournfully before the Lord of hosts?
A lot of people have asked me, why should I worship you? Why should I believe that you're Christ? What profit will they get from it? And you know what? The answer that I have is that you won't actually gain anything from it. But if the whole world can do so, then profit can be made, because religion could die and people can start seeing sense and logic. They can start worshipping logic and questioning things rather than just believing something in an old book, rather than just believing that logic is of the devil, something handed down to Eve through the line, and stop doing things under the command of some imaginary thing in their head.
And now we call the proud happy.
It's true that most Christians are proud in their belief of lies. And a lot of people have told me, just let people believe what they want to believe, because it makes them happy. But I'm thinking, if them thinking that thousands of people are going to die, if that makes them happy, then there's something wrong with them.
Yea, they that work wickedness are set up. Yea, they that tempt God are even delivered.
And this person is having the same difficulty that I am having, but they're the ones that are worshipping death. And I have the keys to stop them from doing that. But I only really want to analyze the New Testament because the New Testament is more correct. I think with the Old Testament there's a lot more explanation needed, and I do need to change quite a lot of things. But when it comes to the Old Testament, I would rather see it as, don't put new wine in old bottles, just accept it as being full of lies and move on.